And I just turned around and I hauled ass out of there. I was done. I wasn't dealing with that.
The hypocrisy of the cult is one of the things that turned me away the quickest.
When I turned my headlights on, it turned and looked at us. And one of the things I remember the most were the eyes were glowing red.
I see an orb of light. It is just circling these steps like it is waiting for me.
And he begins to tell them that he saw a UFO. They're basically like, what are you talking about? That's 7 foot up on a tree, peeking around it, and that's where I saw the top of the muzzle, nose, and the eyes. As soon as I made eye contact with this thing, it felt like death.
Welcome back to Tinfoil Tells. I'm your host, Brandon Wright. Tonight's guest, we're going to be joined by Katy Elizabeth. She is a researcher and one of the most experienced people when it comes to Champ, the Lake Champlain creature that could be living out in the waters. I've always wanted to dive into topics involving sea monsters and lake monsters, so this is another one off my bucket list that I get to check off because it's something that's always fascinated me as a kid. I always wanted to go look for Nessie and the Loch Ness and all that other good stuff, but I haven't had the opportunity to speak with anyone that's ever had a sighting or anything like that, so I'm definitely looking forward to talking with Katy. But before we bring her on, if you've ever had an experience and you'd like to be on an episode of Tinfoil Tells, there's a couple things you can do. You can either send an email to tinfoiltellspodcast@gmail.com, or you can go to tinfoiltells.com and go to the contact section. Just make sure to reach out and we will get something scheduled for a future episode. If you'd like to help the podcast out, I ask you to share it around. Word of mouth is the best way of getting the podcast out there to new listeners. And for every new listener is a potential new guest. You can also help out by leaving a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to Tinfoil Tells at. Just click the 5 stars. And it helps with the podcast rankings, and it makes it more discoverable for anyone out there that could potentially find the podcast. This past weekend, I was at the Indiana Bigfoot Conference, met a lot of interesting people, and met some listeners. So I definitely appreciate that. But I will give a shout out to Kathy Gill, coming up talk with me for a while. It's nice to meet you. Glad that you're a listener of the show. I also want to say thanks to Leroy Nail and Debbie Sims for putting it on. Definitely looking forward to next year's. And for all the speakers and everyone else that I did meet, it was a great time. Glad I got to talk to some of you guys. Hopefully we get something scheduled for episodes here in the future. I may sound a little bit under the weather, but I guess that's a topic for a different episode maybe. I won't go down that rabbit hole on this one. But to finish things up here, just want to say I appreciate everyone that listens to Tinfoil Tells. There's some cool things going on. I don't want to ruin anything or spoil anything, especially when it's not even 100% confirmed yet. But I'm working on some things in the background, and hopefully it'll improve the show, and we'll just see what happens. We're going to go ahead now and bring Katy on. Like I said earlier, I'm definitely looking forward to talking with her. This is a topic that has always been one of the things since my early childhood I've been fascinated with, so I'm definitely looking forward to it. And I hope you guys enjoy the conversation. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I'd like to take this time to welcome my guest tonight. Katy, thanks for coming on here and talking to me.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's a pleasure.
Would you like to let the audience know a little bit about yourself?
Okay, well, my name is Katy Elizabeth. I am the president and founder of Champ Search, an organization that's dedicated to studying, proving the existence, and most importantly, protecting the unique species of animals that call New York and Vermont's beautiful Lake Champlain home. These animals known as Champ, and yes, there is more than one unknown creature inhabiting Lake Champlain.
Now, this is a topic that I've definitely been looking forward to getting into because lake monsters or sea serpents or anything like that, that's even as a small kid, like the Loch Ness monster was like a huge thing for me. So I don't know a whole lot about Champ for some reason. Like it's not something that I've ever really like dove into. I look more into like Loch Ness than I did any of the other ones, which is weird because I'm here in America. But would you like to kind of go over a little bit about it for people that aren't necessarily familiar what it actually could be?
Sure. Let's see. Well, there's many theories to what these animals could possibly be. The most common one, of course, is the plesiosaur, which is an ancient reptile. It goes back millions and millions of years ago. That's what I call the romantic theory of Champ and Nessie, Ogopogo, and other lake creatures around the world. Um, there's other theory that they could be zeuglodons, which are ancient whales. There's so many different theories that people have come up with. And I like to think outside the box. And with the data that I've collected since 2012, when I had my first experience of a creature on Lake Champlain, I've come up with a theory that is outside the box only because of the data that I have collected. Um, and so I'll start at the beginning when I had my experience. I'll start at the very beginning when I had my interest in Champ first that got me up to Lake Champlain.
Okay.
So I was 7 years old and I was watching an episode of Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack. He always made the program with his amazing voice, mysterious voice. I saw the episode about Champ on that episode, and it was really interesting because the head and neck photo that Sandra Mancy took in 1977 popped up on the screen, and I just was so fascinated by this photograph. And I yelled to my mom, "Mom, I want to go up to Lake Champlain. There's a dinosaur there." And that's all I could think of as a child at 7 years old. So my mom pulled out the old Rand McNally map and she's like, "Well, it's about 5 hours away. We'll go there one of these days," and kind of brushed it off to the side. And it wasn't until 2012, all these years later, I finally got up to Lake Champlain. And it was really strange because when I did get up there, I felt like I was at home. It was the weirdest feeling where I had almost felt like I had been there before and I was taken away at one point. I was back. It was really, really odd, but I felt really at home there. And that that weekend, we spent I think it was 3 or 4 days, but we had left on a Friday and the next day was Saturday and Sunday. The weekend, I remember, um, I was looking out in Button Bay, which because I was staying at Button Bay State Park with some friends, and a couple of the friends were Bigfoot researchers. And at the time, I was doing paranormal investigating, which I don't do anymore because of various reasons. We'll get talking about that later, but
Hmm.
it was amazing because the second day I was there, I had my first experience, my first sighting of something that I could not explain. I've grown up in Rhode Island, the ocean state, and I'm familiar with boat wakes and whales and dolphins. I do study cetaceans currently for marine bioacoustics and marine biology. At the time, I seen this hump rise to the surface of the water out in the bay, and I was like, "What the hell is that?" And I kept trying to think logically, of course. So it's probably a big otter or a beaver or some kind of snake. That's all I could think of. But it started moving in a vertical undulation, which is really strange to me. There was no head and neck. Those sightings are extremely rare when they do happen. So it was really strange to me. And of course, I didn't have my camera on me as always, but in 2014, I did. And I did get a video of a champ animal crossing Button Bay that's been on many programs on the History Channel, Discovery Channel, etc. So it was really, really cool that I managed to get something on camera a couple years later. Thank God for that. And that kind of helped with people saying that I was absolutely crazy and I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. I didn't know what I was seeing. So that experience is what sparked me to start my organization, Champ Search. Since then, I've actually launched a couple other projects. One is the International Dracontology Alliance, and that is basically the study of lake creatures around the globe. So it's more than just Champ, Nessie, Ogopogo, Memphre. Memphre is another creature that's not too far from Lake Champlain, actually, about 2.5 hours in Lake Memphremagog. Say that about five times in a row. I
I
bet
couldn't
you
even
can't
say it
do it.
once.
Exactly. It's a Native American name. So it's a very strange lake. It's very, very dark. Um Lake Champlain's not that clear. Some areas are clearer than others, but in the summertime when these sightings are happening, it is very, very green because of the algae content. Over at Loch Ness, there's a problem there with visibility with the peat content that happens over there. So it's very brownish in color. And it's just amazing how these lake creatures like these really murky lakes, and it's really difficult to get anything on the underwater cameras. I do have underwater cameras that I use during my research. I have an underwater ROV that goes down to 350 feet deep. What else do I have? I've got a hydrophone system to record underwater sounds. I also have game cameras that I set up around the lake in the marsh systems in particular, because there have been many reports of these creatures, believe it or not, being seen on land and running across roads, which is really strange. And there are quite a few across the globe about the same phenomenon. Over at Loch Ness, there was a Spicer account of George Spicer and his wife driving down the road and a Nessie crossing the road, kind of like an inchworm in a vertical undulation. So there's quite a few reports like that, and I believe it's because these animals are, if not the same species, something in the same family, so to speak.
I've always wanted to, I speak for probably a lot of people. I've always wanted to see something like that. But I'm also the type of person that's afraid of water. So you don't,
It's yeah, I'm the type, it's kind of funny, probably because I've had so much data that I've collected. Um, I'm not afraid to swim in the lake. I'm afraid of the lamprey that live in the lake. They're
hmm
like this, I don't know if you know what lamprey are, but they're really nasty looking. They're a very small eel looking like creature with a
yeah.
round mouth with all these little teeth around in a circle form. And they're like a leech. They'll leech onto fish and suck all the fluids out. It's pretty nasty. And they do attack swimmers. There's a lot of marathon swimmers that have gone across the lake and they've gotten attacked by these things. So that's what I'm afraid of. It's not necessarily the champ animals. I think they're more afraid of us than we are of them. So yeah, having a fear for water, um, you do overcome it though, I think. You gotta go out there and go in the water more.
This past summer, a couple months ago, I rented a pontoon boat for my friend's bachelor party, and I did get out in the lake that's kind of around here. I've never heard of any stories of anything stalking these lakes, so I wasn't too afraid of that. Other than, like you just mentioned, I was afraid of leeches or other things that are in normal in the waters that kind of creep me out in general. Like swimming with fish just seems strange to me. I don't know why, but like just dark, murky water where I can't see the bottom, it's just never been just freaks me out.
Yeah, I'm more of the type who likes the clear water.
hmm
Um, Down where I live now, I go up to the lake in the summer. I was living on the lake full time. But I got tired of the nasty winters in Vermont. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna go down south and just go up during champ season, which starts in the spring. The best time to see these animals is from June until September. Best months are, I think, July, August, September. I seem to have a lot of luck in August for some reason. Um, it's a lot. Well, the water itself, I think these animals are ectothermic, and ectothermic creatures, you're talking turtles, frogs, amphibians, and reptiles. They need the outside temperatures to sustain their inner core temperature to keep moving. Um, and I've logged a lot of these different water temperature readings, and they coincide with when the most sightings are. And then on the other hand, you got to think of too, in the summertime, you got more people out on the lake too. But there have been some strange reports around December and January, but very, very rare. I've never gotten a sound recording of these creatures in the wintertime. I've done a lot of ice fishing. I put the hydrophone system down when I'm fishing to listen for sounds, and it's just really, really, really quiet. So I think like the turtles, they go into a torpor like state where they're not eating, they're slowing down. And in the meantime, the fish are replenishing at that time. And if they are a type of reptile or amphibious creature, um, they don't need to eat all the time to sustain. I mean, there's been crocodiles and alligators that have gone a year to a year and a half without food and survived. So if we were dealing with a cetacean species like whale or dolphin, number one, we'd see them all the time surfacing. Number two, they would be more social and they would be eating Lake Champlain on a house and home. So that's just my theory anyway.
Now, when you've had your sightings and everything, what all did you actually see in it? Like that you could definitively say you for sure saw something? Because I know a lot of people like to toss out when they see things, oh, you saw like an otter, which is strange to me that people would mistake an otter for a larger creature. Or the most notorious thing that I've seen that people are always trying to say is like you saw a piece of wood floating, like a log.
Yes, floating logs.
So,
Well, what during my sighting, it was really good to the point where there was a sailboat moored in the background to use for scale size, and that sailboat was around 20 feet in length, and this was about 15 feet in length of what I could see at the surface of the water. I had other people with me. Um, One of them was in my paranormal group, and the other two were Bigfooters. And I'm like, you guys, do you see that? And they're like, oh, that's cool. Like they had no interest. I'm like, what are you crazy? Like it was weird. Um, but they were like, that is strange. I don't know. I don't know what it is. But growing up in the ocean state on the water, I'm familiar with floating logs and such, and especially now that I'm a captain of my own research vessel. We got to keep an eye out for those things that we don't hit the boat with. We don't be hitting the prop and ruining the prop. I'm always keeping an eye out for stuff like that. And there have been a couple of strange reports by word of mouth over the years of boats hitting champ animals or one running into a boat. Those reports go back probably, I think the last time I had heard something about one being run into or basically running into a boat, I think it was around like 20 years ago. But before that, a lot of them were back in the 1800s. And it seemed like the 1800s were a really, really busy, busy time for champ. There was probably more of them in the lake. I mean, if you ever flown over Lake Champlain, you would be totally shocked and amazed at how huge it is. And it still shocks me to this day when I fly into Burlington Airport and I look down at that lake and how vast it is. And I'm like, how the hell did I get echolocation recordings, video, and sonar as well? And it's, I think because I'm out on the lake all the time. And also, I'm the only champ researcher in history that's ever had their own boat. It's like nobody else ever freaking had a boat. It's like I don't get it, but it's expensive. All of this stuff costs a lot of money, and but it's my passion and what I love to do. And the most important thing is the protection aspect, because in 2018 I wrote a champ law that was passed by New York State Legislature. So that was a really amazing feat and accomplishment for me. And it was because of all the data that I had collected, plus, of course, the eyewitness reports of the locals. I mean, some of these locals that have had reports over the years have been fishing there their whole lives. They're 80 years old. And a lot of people are really hesitant to talk about seeing something because they're afraid of ridicule. But at that point, when you're 80 and 90 years old, I don't think they really give a crap, you know? They're just like, whatever. They don't believe me. I don't care. I'm not
right.
going to be here. I have nothing to lose at this age, you know?
Yeah.
But I think those reports with the older people and the reports with the mass sightings that really, really grab my attention because you're dealing with multiple people seeing the same thing at the same time. It's not just one person that happened to be drunk. Like, I hate this whole thing where people say, oh, so and so must have been drunk when they saw a champ, ha ha ha. Or the other comment is people walking out of the bar and seeing something, because there was over in Port Henry, New York, for example, there was the Bulwaga Bay Bar. It's not there anymore. Building's still there, but it's closed a long time ago. But they used to joke with people that have had sightings in the area and saying, you must have been at the bar. And it's like, damn, I mean, in the past, I've drank at the lake. I've never seen a damn thing. It's like, if anything, I think that people that are drunk aren't even aware of much, really. I mean, I think you're going to be doing some kind of psychedelics if you see, wow, 100-foot long creature, which is not what these animals are. The 100-foot long monster stories is just a bunch of nonsense. And it makes me so mad that these stories that they come out with, oh, this 100-foot long creature. It's like the average size is 15 to 35 feet, which is very large for a champ animal. Very rare occasion where one has been that large. But I think maybe what's happening is people are seeing multiple creatures, one behind the other, thinking it's just one creature. They could be seeing weights that go for a long, long stretch of the lake as well. There's sturgeon in the lake, but they are endangered. They grow up to 7 feet, and there's not that many of them left in the lake. So, I mean, I know with my video, my sonar stuff, and all of that's been analyzed by scientists on Discovery Channel, History Channel, Travel Channel, a whole bunch, and stated authentic that they are totally baffled what I'm coming up with in Lake Champlain, because there's no animal in Lake Champlain that should be echolocating, but there definitely is. So I'm not the only person who's captured echolocation in the lake. There was a woman named Elizabeth von Muggenthaler, and she was on Monster Quest. I was friends with her, and she had gotten recordings as well. She was a bioacoustician. So you're not dealing with just like, it's just me getting stuff. I mean, there's other people getting echolocation. My friend William Drain Guinness, who had passed away, unfortunately, he had gotten some echolocation as well. Very similar to what I have and what Liz has. So we're not dealing with just some crackpot making up stuff. There's definitely population of these creatures in the lake, and I felt like it was my duty to be their voice, because I mean, they're probably the last of their kind, because they're not in every lake. Lake Memphremagog, I believe there's the same type of animal in that lake. Whether or not they're connected by tunnels, that's another thing that people have come up with for theories. There was a really interesting story at a lake called Lake Willoughby in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont. And Lake Willoughby is probably about 2 hours, not about 2.5 hours. Memphremagog from Champlain is probably 2 hours, 45 minutes. Memphremagog and Willoughby are probably about 20 minutes from each other, 15 to 20 minutes. The interesting part about Lake Willoughby is it's extremely clear. I mean, it looks like the Caribbean. I took a picture swimming there, and everybody's like, oh, you're down in the Bahamas? And I'm like, no, I'm in Vermont. And they're like, get the hell out. That's crazy. It's a glacial lake. It goes down to 350 feet, and it's only 5 miles long. It's kind of like a crater, the lake. It's strange. And then, since Lake Memphremagog isn't too far away, there's a couple of other lakes, Echo Lake, Crystal Lake, one more, Lake Seymour, that there have been sightings of these things in those lakes. And I often wondered, maybe they're connected to each other somehow, because back in the 1800s, there was a horse, I'm not even trying to think of like how to say this. There was a team of horses that were carrying across the lake when it was frozen, blocks of ice, and they fell through the ice. and they broke through and just disappeared. Nobody knew what the hell happened. They didn't come floating up, but they did a week later, excuse me, over in Crystal Lake down the road. So they're like, how the hell did they end up over here? So there is a theory that there are some tunnels that are connecting Lake Memphremagog, Lake Willoughby, Lake Seymour, Crystal Lake, and Echo Lake. So it's kind of strange. And you wonder over in Scotland, you've got Loch Ness, of course, but you also have Loch Morar, Loch Lochy, Loch Oich. There's so many of these lochs where these animals have been seen. And you wonder if that's the same thing that's going on over in Scotland.
Heard some people recently toss out the idea that these things are, and this is, you have this with Bigfoot and you have this with other things too, but like they're not necessarily from here. Like they're not on the
Yeah.
same, they're not on the same frequency levels that we are in our existing plane. So I don't want to say they're interdimensional, but that's what I've been hearing a lot of people toss out these ideas of what sea monsters are, which again, I remain skeptical on a lot of stuff in general, so I don't know one way or the other, but I can't see everything seems to be the unexplainable lately has turned into these interdimensional, different frequency type aspects. So I was like, I almost feel like that's just throwing something out there because you can't explain it.
No, I agree. I don't believe I believe what we're dealing with here is definitely a biological species. The recordings and whatnot. Although there are some people that have gotten in the paranormal world have gotten underwater recordings of like where Pearl Harbor is and shipwrecks and gotten actually EVPs on hydrophone systems, which is really, really interesting. Like I said, I don't deal with the paranormal stuff anymore. I had a few strange experiences, EVP stuff, and afterwards had some strange things that happened at home. I believe that whatever was followed me. So I don't really do that stuff anymore. I'd rather stick to a cryptid. And if the champs follow me home, I'm going to be really happy about it. I'm not going to be freaked out in the middle of the night with faucets turning on and footsteps in my house.
Right.
But I definitely believe that there is a little bit of a spiritual thing around these creatures. The only reason why I believe that is because the Native Americans up around Champlain and Lake Memphremagog and also, the North American lakes, of course, they always talked about these horned serpents. And what's really interesting about that is they said that the creator created specifically these creatures, specifically the champ animals, to protect Lake Champlain. Now, when I had gotten my sonar images in 2019, and then in 2022, I got a sonar video because I upgraded I was going to say hydrophone. I upgraded my sonar system to video, so it shows movement. The only bad side to that is you can't go very fast doing that with the scans, so it's kind of hard to keep up with them. If they are around, they can get away very quickly. So I went out with my friend who's since passed away, unfortunately. My friend Frank Horton, who had an on-land sighting of a champ on the beach. I had met him at an event called Champ Day over in Port Henry. We got chatting and was totally amazed at his sighting. And of course, there was another woman that I had met that had an on-land sighting as well. So we got talking, and we just became friends, and then he joined my group. So we were out on the lake, and I said to him, I said, Frank, because he was Cherokee Indian, and I said, Frank, could you do like a little ceremony, something to summon the horned serpents? And he's like, hey, it won't hurt, So he took out his abalone shell and his sage and his eagle feather, and he did a chant, and I have it on video, which is kind of cool. And it was crazy because within the hour, we had gone up north from where we were in Port Henry. We turned around the boat because we realized that the freaking boat was running out of gas. The boat was a 1988, and the gas gauge kind of jumped up and down, and I didn't realize till I slowed the boat down that we were very, very low on fuel. And oh Lord. So I'm like, guess we gotta go back and get gas. Kind of sucks when you have a faulty gas gauge on a boat. So I turned the boat around, and when I turned the boat around, him and Teresa, his wife, started yelling, we just saw something rise 3 feet out of the water. It was black. And I'm like, I couldn't really hear them too good. I'm like, what? Because of the motor. And they repeated it again. And I said, oh, it was probably just the weight because I turned around thinking these guys are crazy, you know? So I get that about halfway down the lake with them. And Frank goes, what the hell is that on the screen? And I look at the screen and there's these two long looking things on the bottom. I said, I don't know, but I'll take a picture of it. So I took a snapshot because in the sonar unit at the time has a memory card and you can do snapshots of all the images. And we had taken previously 56 other images as we were going along, school the fish and whatnot. The screen was very, very small, so it's hard to make anything out. And then you get on the computer and you can blow it up and enhance it. So we finally got back to the dock and said, hell with it. We'll try again tomorrow. And it was really hot out that day. I think it was like 90 degrees out. So I went back home and I'm just like having coffee the next morning and going over the sonar images, and I came across that one sonar image and I'm like, okay, so I zoomed into it and I was totally in shock because one of them just looked like this long squiggly thing, and then the other one had a face, had nostrils and these round like protuberances on top of the head. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Am I imagining this? Like, this is crazy. And I know that I wasn't imagining it because 3 weeks later, I got the second image of them swimming underneath the boat, and the one in the front, same kind of face, just blurry though, because it was swimming. Um, it was amazing because I had gone back to the location where I got in the first image because I wanted to rule out it was, logs laying on the bottom, of course. And I said, well, if it's logs, it's logs. I'm going to go back to the same location and debunk this whole thing. So I did, and the logs, they were gone. And then going up the lake further, there's these two things under the boat. And I'm like, you've got to be freaking kidding me. Same shape, same size. So that was just amazing. And then in 2022, I got a sonar video of one. It's really strange because at first I thought it was a sturgeon because of how the image looks at first. But then if you slow it down, you can see that the neck extends like an accordion. It's the weirdest thing. And you can see a appendage move back like a paddle. And the way it moved looked like almost like an alligator's foot, like the way an alligator would swim. And everybody's like, what the hell is that? That's crazy to see like the leg move. That's why I wanted this military grade sonar that does video, because I wanted to show the movement. The only downside to it is you got to go super duper slow. That gives them a chance to get away pretty quickly. So you have to go slow, and you only have so much of that sonar beam that they have to be right in it. It doesn't cover as much as the traditional sonar imagery. So that was pretty damn interesting. And that made worldwide news. And even in Germany, it's kind of funny because I have cousins in Germany, and they were really surprised to see. I didn't even know. I never talked to anybody over there about it. They had just happened to find the video, and by word of mouth, I guess, it ended up on German news. So it was pretty amazing. So I did get something this year, last week, that I haven't shown anybody yet. So anybody listening, and by the time this comes out, it will be, if you Google my name, Katy Elizabeth Champ search, or Katy Elizabeth Champ Lake Champlain, you'll probably see that we captured echolocation, and that's something we have not gotten since 2018. But this echolocation is quite different because there's a distinct buzzing sound in between. That buzzing sound is something when I recorded whales and dolphins, once in a while you'll get this buzzing sound, and scientists really don't know exactly what they think it's for when they're about to snatch prey. So it's very similar to that, and I'm doing a comparison video with the sounds and comparing that to um, whale and dolphin. Not that I believe we're dealing with a cetacean species, but I think it's something that these animals have developed over time through evolutionary adaptation. And what you have to remember is Lake Champlain used to be an arm of the Atlantic Ocean, and it's indirectly connected down up through the St. Lawrence River. And what's really interesting is it was home to beluga whale, and a beluga whale skeleton was unearthed in 1849 by Zadok Thompson. Actually, Zadok Thompson studied it, but it was a railroad crew that had found it, and they thought it was the skull and bones of an ox or horse. And then they got a hold of Zadok Thompson, and he confirmed it was a beluga whale from 10 to 12,000 years ago when it was once the Champlain Sea. So this area is actually home to the oldest coral reef in the world. That's another thing to think about. The other thing that's really amazing too is that it's also home to ancient fish that are still in there today. You have bowfin, gar, and sturgeon. And those three species of fish go back 100 million years. So I don't understand why some people don't think that the whole thing, they think that it's just totally impossible for a species of large animals inhabiting Lake Champlain are still there from millions of years ago. But there's fish that are in the lake that are still there. So, like I always say, nature has a way.
There's other ones that are supposedly offshoots of I've heard you mentioned in the beginning, but like whales used to have, before they were considered whales, they were meant millions of years ago. I don't know the exact time frame, but I know like whales used to be on land. That's
Yes, yes. I was actually going to talk about the evolutionary thing.
okay.
Yeah, whales used to be on land, and then they adapted to the ocean. Um, Nature has a way, and with the champ animals, I don't believe that they're cetacean at all because we see them coming up for air all the time. They'd be more social. That's our modern day cetaceans, of course. Um, Whatever these animals are, I think they're ectothermic, like I mentioned earlier. There's been some on-land reports of them sunbathing as well. And the only animals that really sunbathe are, you have seals that are mammals. They will go up for the sun and stuff, but I think you'd be seeing them all the time if they were a type of mammal, unless there's some strange hybrid of mammal, reptile, who the hell knows. The evolution's kind of funny.
Right.
I think there's a lot about it that we really are going to find out more about. And I think that, a lot of people have asked me this question, if there's these animals in the lake, where the hell are they dead? Like, where do they go when they die? And that is a good question. We don't have these things washing up on shore. Um, Due to their size, I think that they just sink to the bottom. I mean, when you watch on the History Channel, the swamp people, when they shoot the alligators, that they have to go and grab the alligators quickly with a treble hook before they sink to the bottom because they're so muscular and so heavy. Although there are some alligators that are found floating around, but usually by the time anybody finds anything, they're all mostly devoured anyway. Kind of like with Bigfoot, people theorize that maybe they bury their dead. But with the champ animals, I think maybe they go into the mud. Maybe they go into caves when they know it's their time. Because animals do know when their time is up. I had a friend that had a cat that he couldn't find her one day, and she actually buried herself, which was, oh my God, I was like, you got to be kidding me. And then she passed away a few days later. It was really sad, but I think that animals do know. Sea turtles go into caves to die as well. So there definitely is a way. I don't think we're dealing with just something paranormal. I really don't. Because there's been tracks found, four-toed webbed footprints of these animals as well near the swamps. I found some very strange prints myself that I had photographs of and cut throughs in the marsh. Um, of course, there's beavers and otters that cut through and snakes and stuff like that. So you got to consider that. But the prints themselves are really interesting. And the the marsh systems around Lake Champlain, there's over 300,000 acres of marshland. It's crazy how huge. And I had brought my friend Dave Shealy, who does the skunk ape research down here in Florida, up to the lake, and he's done tons of research in the Everglades looking for the skunk ape, and he's very familiar with alligators and pythons and such. So I said, hey, I'm going to take him up to the marsh and just kind of show him around and see if he picks up on anything. I didn't even tell him what I wanted his opinion on. So I took him to this marsh system where these animals have been seen, particularly at night, and he was like, wow, these cut throughs are really, really strange. They remind me of alligator tracks, like the through the vegetation and stuff. But he was quite fascinated by the vastness of the swamps around the lake. The lake is so huge. I mean, there's people that come up on a whim and they're like, oh, I'm gonna go try to find champ or whatever. And they get out there and they say to me, you gotta be kidding me. How the hell do you do this? Like, where do you go? And how do you start? It's like finding a needle in a haystack. But I go by the reports and figured out the hot spots. And I have a specific area that I go to. And I'm very particular about, I don't tell anybody where, only because, I mean, I go to Button Bay. Like, I just tell them one place. I have like certain special spots where I've gotten sonar and stuff. But to me, it's about the protection aspect. And a lot of people really don't understand that. But there's been people that have said, oh, I'll shoot one, or there's been newspaper reports. One in particular, this lady was in her 70s and she actually shot at what she thought was champ, and it ended up being a 7 foot long sturgeon, and it washed up 2 days later. So that was pretty interesting. But there are people that will do anything to just prove or disprove that these things are there, and I believe it's my duty to help protect them because I'm a nature nut. I'm into the conservation aspect of the lake, and wherever I go, I'm always picking up garbage. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed in the Bigfoot world. Like, you don't really hear hardly anybody talk about that. Like, we need to focus on protecting our environment. It's always about, well, I saw this one at this conference. I'm going to that conference. Well, how about I have a conference that raises money for, like, say, you buy a ticket, you plant a tree, stuff like that. I think that should be the focus of, instead of just, the glorification and going out in the woods and yelling and screaming. I don't think that the research should be about that.
I honestly don't know what they plan on finding by yelling and screaming, because
Me,
if it's an
me
elusive
either.
creature going out there and giving away your location, I'm pretty sure it's not going to come to you.
Well,
But
television's television. I mean, you watch these shows, and so many people think that, how do you put it? A lot of um,
it's entertainment.
that's it. And people don't get that. They really don't get that. And I mean, I've been on quite a few programs. I always tell them right out, the production companies, I've got a couple of rules here. Um, I will not participate in any type of hoaxing or fakery. There's no way I'm going to do that because I take too much pride in what I do and all the hard work that I've done to collect the data that I have. It means too much to me. But that's just the way TV is. They try sometimes, and I've refused quite a few times when they've come up with stupid ideas. I'm like, nope, I'm not doing that. Not happening. So, but there are people out there that think everything they see is right, real. And they usually hype things up sometimes, but every program I've been on, I've told them that I'm not going to do that. Not going to
Mhm.
happen. Um, yeah, it's kind of stupid how they do that, but that's entertainment, and that's what it needs to be treated as, is entertainment.
I've always said for shows like, and I'm just naming Finding Bigfoot 'cause that's the first one that comes to mind.
Yeah.
If they actually found Bigfoot, they wouldn't have a show anymore. So I always feel like when you watch these shows, there's never really anything discovered. Like they might find a clue here or there, just like I used to watch a show, but I stopped watching it where they've been drilling looking for the money pit. I can't think of what it's called. Curse of Oak Island. That
Oh
show
yeah,
that
yeah.
show's been on for like 12 years now. At what point are they going to find something, or there's just everyone keeps coming back because they might find a piece of dirt or a piece of wood that could be from like the 1700s? Since like it got so repetitive and boring that I just quit watching it because it's like it's pointless.
Well, I think the reason why a lot of times these shows they don't find anything is because they're going by a script and they're not actually looking for anything. They go to the location, and I mean every freaking show. I've been on a whole ton of these shows with various hosts and stuff. They come in, they're there for 2 hours, and they go home. It's like, well, how the hell are you going to find anything if you're here for 2 hours? You know, I'll film with them for a couple hours. Sometimes it's a whole day. But even a whole day, I mean, that's you're lucky if you get something in a whole day. I mean, I filmed with NBC at one point, and I did get echolocation at that point, but I wasn't aware of it when it was happening. I had cameras in my face, a lot going on. I heard something on the hydrophone. I was like, that was interesting. And it wasn't until like later on, after going through all of the audio, that I discovered it. And I called them up and I let them listen to it. So, but normally, I think it's really rare because when you're spending, I know where to go. Like I know the hot spots, but otherwise it's like trying to find a damn needle in a haystack. But with these shows, they're not there that long. They kind of act like on these shows, oh, I've been here for 3 weeks or a month. No, they're there for like a day or two, if you're lucky for 2 days. So it's until you're behind the scenes and actually see the things behind it. I mean, some of these production companies are crazy. Like they'll take a break and they're out having shots of tequila and smoking and like it's crazy. You never expect production companies to be that way. And I'm telling you, I haven't run into one that was like really straight laced. Everybody's just it's like a big party. It's crazy. It's kind of funny though, because you wouldn't expect it. You always like think of these straight laced guys, behind the camera and directors and all that, just being all serious about what they're doing. Oh hell no, it's the total opposite. But I guess it makes it fun. That's okay. You gotta have fun sometime.
I've never had to deal with it, so I don't know a whole lot about it. I just know from watching the shows and everything, there's a lot of stuff that just seems so dumb or fake or it's head scratching.
I
But
think the one that makes me laugh the most probably, and I'm sure they're great guys. I've heard they are, is Mountain Monsters.
oh yeah, I couldn't get past a couple episodes. Like I was like, is this supposed to be serious? Because if it is, this is completely ridiculous.
Sorry, my dogs are barking. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
Um, yeah, I mean, I've watched it, and I just watch it for comedy relief, really. I'm like, what the hell are they? This is just crazy. But they get into all these conferences and stuff, and like speaking different things, and they get to all these events, and it's like, I guess whatever to sell tickets, you
Right.
know. So yeah, this year was kind of hectic a little bit because the weather was really uncooperative until September. I went in June, I went in July, end of July into August, and then I went in September. And the two other trips was just a washout. It rained so much. There was flooding, all kinds of debris flowing into the lake. It was pretty nasty. And it really did a number on my time there. Then my boat needed stuff fixed. That's another story. I had to do a bunch of things to that. So finally, I call it the champ curse. There's always some stupid thing that happens that tries to totally screw up the whole expedition, but I managed to get through it. And I always joke and say that it's the Native American curse to protect the champ animals. But they obviously know that I don't mean them any harm, so I think that's why I get lucky with good luck and with the boat running good and everything coming through. So um I'm just glad it was a successful expedition this time where we had gotten something. I always try to remember and remind myself that I'm not going to get something every year because I have been so lucky with things. I think the next step would be some sort of DNA. I have worked with television programs of collecting DNA, which came out basically inconclusive. And I think the reason for that is that one time the water samples, I think, got degraded. They waited too long to submit them. And at the time, we had COVID going on. So the labs were closed, and then they happened to take it to another lab. So it's like, well, by the time the DNA got there, it was degraded. That's just my opinion. They did find something really interesting, though. Muskellunge, which is a type of fish, muskie, are endangered in Lake Champlain, and they found a very large amount of muskellunge DNA, which was really, really good. That gave me a little bit of hope for the health of Lake Champlain because there is millions of gallons of sewage getting into the lake every year. They're allowing that to happen, which is really unfortunate. I don't know. Something definitely needs to be done about that. So I'm trying to think of anything else I could mention. Um, well, I am going next year to Loch Ness and Loch Morar, where there's been a lot of sightings, and I'm going to try my protocol on those lochs and hopefully get something over there to compare it to what we have here in Lake Champlain. Hopefully, similar sonar readings or hydrophone recordings. So that's going to be a really fun trip. Um, let's see, this spring I'm going to be coming out with a documentary called Lady of the Lake, The Search for Champ. And it's basically about my journey into this sort of work. My book, Water Horse of Lake Champlain, The Search, is now available on Amazon.com. So if you guys want to read about it, oh God, I spent so much time working on this book. I think it was about a year and a half. And the book is 250 pages long. It's available on Amazon if anybody wants to check it out. It's very unique to where it's not just reiterated stories. This book is really unique because of the data that I have collected and comparing it to other science-based data. So it's pretty rare to see in a book. Usually it's just stories reiterated from one to another, but this has other things in it that are of great interest. And I've got a lot of great reviews from the book so far. So if you guys want to check that out. I'm also working on a UFO documentary, which is pretty interesting. I went out to the Nevada desert about 6 months ago to film for that. Met some really interesting people. So I just came out with my indie production company called Unclassified Films, and I'm going to be doing UFO documentaries, cryptid documentaries, paranormal, anything unknown, and also nature documentaries because I'm a big nature nut and I'm always out in nature. It's very rare that you see me in the house. I think the biggest thing about cryptid investigations, you need to get off the couch and go out there if we're going to prove these things to the scientific community. It's not going to happen sitting on forum boards and arguing on the computer because you have so many keyboard warriors who are saying all these things about people that are actually going out there and looking for creatures and making some pretty interesting finds. But that's the way it is in the world, isn't it? You get these people behind the computer, and then when you see them in person, they have nothing to say. They have absolutely nothing to say. So I think it's really important for people to get out there and do the boots on the ground work, which is what I really work hard at. Because I believe, like they say, the old saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Determination and believing in yourself will get you to a lot of places. So I think that's the positive thing to think about.
For your links for your book and everything else, you can send me a message with all those, and I'll make sure to include them in the show notes for any of the listeners out there that would like to look
Okay.
into it.
And I also have I got my website. I can give you my website as
Mm-hmm.
well. They can go on it and check out the recordings and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah, that works. Well, Katie, it's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed being on this show. And um, I was going to ask you, you done some Bigfoot research and that sort of thing, like field stuff, or are you mostly like a how do you put it, armchair guy?
I am a guy with a microphone. I will say that I do not go out looking for things very often because I'm afraid of things that are going to come back looking for me. And,
Yes. No, I hear
and
you.
and I've had a lot of my own experiences, not so much Bigfoot related, but I think, and this is, as I said earlier, I'm kind of a skeptic. For me, seeing is believing, and
Yes.
I want to believe, but I just haven't had the Bigfoot experience. So I can't say that I 100% dive into Bigfoot as saying, yes, that's a real thing. But at the same time, I believe people are seeing something. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like with me, I've never seen Bigfoot. Do I believe people are seeing something? Absolutely. And I think there are so many things out there in this world that we have no clue about. And with having my champ experiences, um, I know that there's something there. And I mean, hey, if they pass a law of protection, they know something's there. That's just my opinion. They're not going to do it for the hell of it.
right. That was one of the things I actually was going to ask before we wrap this up. I'm glad you brought it up. How did that come about to where you were able to get them to pass it? Because for me, that's a strange thing that they would pass something for like an animal that they don't even determine does even exist. Like that's kind of a weird thing for me to think that they would actually go along with it.
Yeah. A lot of people that have not been up to Lake Champlain, they think that the whole thing with Champ is for tourism. Now, the funny thing is, you hardly see anything about Champ up there. It's crazy. Like, they need tourism because, like, the whole area is really, I mean, up in Vermont, it's hoity-toity, but the reality is most people that live there are dead broke. I mean, the people that are still living in Vermont have some money. It's not a very, very cheap place to live. Let's put it that way. I lived there for about 6 years, so I and going up there for about 12. So that'd be my 13th year next year, actually. So I know all about that. But the general consensus is like, oh, they made up this whole thing for tourism, which is crap. Um, but I think with the data I've collected, the other data that others have collected, and all of these people that are in the area who have seen these things, these people are very upstanding citizens. They're not the type of people to make up stories. So I think with all of that, usually when you talk to somebody that's on the town board or legislature, they know someone that's had an experience. And, my uncle so and so saw a champ back in 1975, So I think that's what's going on is that the people that are having these sightings, they know of them as upstanding members of the community. So they're not going to just shove that away. But then you add in the data collected as well. So they're like, hey, maybe we really need to do something to protect these animals, which is awesome. So that was a really exciting thing when that happened, when that law was passed.
Yeah, that is. I think they did something similar for Bigfoot, didn't they, over in Oregon or was it Washington?
I think it was Washington. I heard something, but I didn't really look into it.
So I don't know if I've seen it before, and I kind of thought maybe it was just a joke, but I think somewhere they put up that Bigfoot was like a protective species.
Oh yeah, like was it like at signs or something? I think I might have seen that.
I don't know if it was ever passed into law. I know I've seen stuff about it, but
I'll have to definitely look into that because I'm curious myself.
Yeah, when it comes to stuff like I see on the internet, I take it with a grain of salt just because it's the internet and you can't believe anything you see on there half the time.
Exactly. I mean, there's just so many. There was someone on Facebook yesterday. I ended up blocking the guy because it annoyed the hell out of me, but he was posting like photos of like Bigfoot supposedly, and it's two masks. You can tell they're gorilla masks. It's like, really, dude?
I know
And if
exactly who
you,
you're talking about.
oh yeah, exactly. And like, oh well, this one told me that he appeared for the photo. Oh, get the hell out of my life. I don't want to deal with it. I cannot stand hoaxers and people that lie about stuff.
M-
I take my
What's
stuff too serious. You know what I mean?
what's worse to me, and I'm sorry for anyone that goes along with this, and I'm not trying to insult you, but the people that believe the blatantly fake stuff. Because I saw the post that you're referring to, and I saw the comments. And I'm like, seriously, how does no one know? It's the fakest looking shit I've ever seen. Like, it looks like
I know.
a mask, and people are like, "Oh, this is one of the best photos I've ever seen of Bigfoot." I was like, it's clearly a mask.
Oh my God. It just really makes you wonder what the world's come to these days, right? It's crazy. Or they're just blowing smoke up his butt. I don't know what's going on, but it's just I saw that and I just had no I'm like, why the hell is this guy on my friends list? I mean, I'm sure he's a nice guy and all, but I don't respect anybody that fakes stuff. It's just something
No,
that's
I
I don't know.
no,
I take my stuff seriously because I know that there's stuff out there that we can't explain. And you got idiots like this that totally ruin it for people that get legitimate, data, which is really sad. So they're screwing things up, and I think that they need to be exposed and people need to just ignore them. And they just want attention. That's all they want is attention.
I just don't understand the concept of needing that attention because it gives them
I don't
attention,
know.
but it doesn't make any sort of sense. Like it's not great attention, but whatever.
No.
And
Well, I
and
guess that's the only they have nothing else going on in their life, I guess, for themselves. It's kind of sad if you think about it, but what are you gonna do?
right. I just feel like people like that are ruining it for the people like you that actually are legitimately trying to find evidence of things, like actually putting in the work and trying to prove existence of things. So when people talk about
Yeah.
it, they bring up the hoaxers and the fakes and all that stuff. So it discredits any sort of real credibility for the people that actually do the work.
Well, yeah, like a similar thing had happened a while ago that this guy, there's a long story behind that guy, but he um he put up that they got drone footage of Champ. I'm like, okay. So I see this drone footage. It's a freaking rock. I know where they took drone footage, and I know the rock. So I went up on the Champlain Bridge, which goes from Vermont to New York, and I got video of it. And I mean, I'm gonna do a presentation about it because the only reason why he was trying to do that or say that it was Champ was number one. It's a long story behind it, but trying to like I don't know, somehow outdo my data or whatever. Stupid. Number two, he's promoting some stupid movie that's about Champ that he had made. And he figured, what better marketing to say, like, oh, Champ was near the little boat, this little rowboat. I mean, the rock is right there. You can see it. So I'm going to be doing a debunking video on that
Mm-hmm.
because that's what makes me upset is that people like that make actually makes my research look great, but but it just ticks me off because I take this so serious and there is something in that lake and you got idiots like this to try to make a few dollars making up stuff. And I just can't stand hoaxers. And this person's done this a few times with other projects that he's worked on and made up a bunch of lies. So people like that I have no respect for, and I guess that's the only attention that they can get, which is kind of sad, but what are you going to do?
Right. You'll have that, I think, in every field. That's kind of what I've discovered in the past couple of years of being involved doing this show is no matter what you do, there's always going to be those types of people.
There is. I mean, the best thing you can do is just be yourself and, be positive and present what you can. I mean, I work really hard. I've been working on this comparison video for the echolocation, comparing it to the other echolocation recordings and also whale, dolphin sounds, man-made sounds that are in the lake, fish sounds that are in the lake. So I've been working on this for a couple of days and I'm totally burnt out. My brain is totally fried, and going over data from the trip as well. So, but I believe the harder you work at things, good things will come to you. So hopefully good things will be in the future for more discoveries with Champ.
Yeah, totally. I hope so too. Well, Katy, it's been a pleasure talking with you.
It was great being on this show. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Not a problem. You have a good night.
You too. Chat soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
And that's the show, everyone. I really hope you guys enjoyed the conversations. If you would like to be a guest on Tinfoil Tells, remember to send an email to tinfoiltellspodcast@gmail.com or go to the contact section of tinfoiltells.com. Just get your message to me. We'll get something scheduled for a future episode. And just remember, the truth lies in the stories we share, the connections we make. Stay curious, stay open-minded. Thank you all for joining us on this journey. And until next time, keep questioning, keep seeking, and keep exploring the unknown. Good night, everyone.
Tinfoil tales in the headphones. Yeah, it's time to rock. Got a story about a cryptic creature. Let's take a walk. Bigfoot, dogman, they're out there in the dark. But the truth is out there like an alien spark. UFO sightings got the whole world shook. Conspiracies unfold like a story in a book. Media control, trying to keep us blind. But oh, before gonna use my whole mind. In history, they don't want us to know the secrets they hide, the truth they won't show. Dominate our society, they keep us in chains. But I'm standing tall, it's time to break the reins. Control, trying to keep us blind. But I won't be fooled, gonna use my own mind. In history, they don't want us to know